welcome back, or welcome if this is your first episode tuning in with me. My name is Melissa and I am here to help guide you through the world of wine. So if you're someone who maybe is new to the wine world, who wants to just learn a little bit more about wine, you're in the right spot, my friend. I've got your back on this. If this is your first episode with me, please make sure to check out some of my other episodes on my channel to kind of really become immersed in the beginning stages of your wine world. Today, we are actually going to be going over one of the most popular white wines, if not the most popular, also known as Chardonnay. So sit back, relax, grab a glass of your favorite wine, and join me on this journey. So just like Riesling and Pinot Noir, Chardonnay is a great varietal. And when it comes to the history of Chardonnay, I actually found some very helpful info from a website known as uncork.biz. And it says that DNA profiling by Dr. Carol Meredith from the University of California at Davis proves that Chardonnay is a cross of an old, nearly extinct variety. Y'all, I'm terrible with pronunciation, so forgive me on this, but Gauwais or Gouais Blanc, and a member of the Pinot family. There is a village called Chardonnay in Méconaire in the southern portion of France's Burgundy region. They actually recently celebrated their 1000th anniversary. Chardonnay most likely originated here and was then spread throughout France by the monks. The earliest recorded reference to Chardonnay occurs in 1330. One man in Australia changed the course of history, though, for Chardonnay. In 1967, Murray Tyrrell jumped the barbed wire fence to liberate Chardonnay cuttings from Penfold's experimental HVD vineyard. The HVD vineyard was planted by the Hunter Valley Distillery Company, which was formed in 1903 when the demand for spirits was high. The distillery was designed to take excess grapes for distillation into fortifying spirits for the manufacture of fortified wines. Penfolds leased it in 1933 and then bought it in 1948. Murray Tyrrell always said it was one of the finest white wine vineyards in Hunter. And in a twist of fate, Tyrrell's actually bought the HVD vineyard in 1982. Chardonnay is the most widely planted variety in Australia and also New Zealand. There's more Chardonnay than Cabernet Sauvignon or Shiraz. Next, we're going to go over the flavor profile with help from my friends at Wine Folly. Y'all know by now my love for Wine Folly, and if you don't, because this might be your first episode, it's basically the easiest and most reliable resource when trying to learn about wine. So here's the best way that I understand Chardonnay. So there are two different styles of Chardonnay wine. There's the creamy, rich classic style, which is oak-aged. Then there's more of this lean version of Chardonnay where you pick up more of those mineral notes, which is the unoaked kind. The winemaking and climate determine which kind of Chardonnay you're going to be getting. You guys know this by now. In general, Chardonnay wine taste profile flavors include a lot of fruit. So you've got lemon, apple, pear, pineapple, jackfruit, passion fruit, peach, fig. You also might get some earthy other things as well, like lemon zest, citrus peel, celery leaf, beeswax, honeysuckle, flint rock, saline solution, almond, jasmine. And then when flavors added with oak aging, you might get vanilla, butter, pie crust, caramelized sugar, creme brulee, dill, coconut, and praline. It's considered a dry wine with medium body and no tannins. Remember, because it's a white wine and it's fermented without skin contact, and tannins come from the skin of wine, it doesn't have tannins to it. So it's medium acidity and ranges between 13.5% to 15% ABV. Now, if you've listened to my other wine episodes, this is a higher alcohol by volume level for a typical white wine. Chardonnay is the most diverse and most planted white wine grape in the world. It's used, for everything from rich Sonoma Chardonnay to the light and zesty Blanc de Blanc champagne. And fun fact, California actually has more plantings of Chardonnay than any other grape. You may also be wondering, why do some Chardonnays taste buttery? So the smell of vanilla, butter, coconut, and dill are all attributes of oak aging. However, the texture that some Chardonnays have that can be described as oily, creamy, smooth, or waxy are from a special kind of winemaking method known as malolactic fermentation, also known as MLF. So what is malolactic fermentation? After the wine is fermented, an additional fermentation called malolactic fermentation, or MLF, will give wine an oily texture. MLF turns tart malic acid, the acid found in apples, to smooth lactic acid, the acid in milk. Chardonnay is very sensitive to winemaking practices. Cool climate Chardonnay produces an abundance of fruit flavors. You can pick up apple, pineapple, peach, melon, and maybe even a hint of lemon. The warmer climate Chardonnays may have less of the fruits, but develop wonderful honey and butterscotch, buttery and nutty flavors that really fill the mouth. Combine this with malolactic fermentation, and the rich, creamy, buttery tastes are certainly assured for your taste buds. Chardonnay is also very easy to over-oak. The trend of fermenting Chardonnay in oak barrels and then storing it in new oak can really kill the fruit characters if you're not careful. You know there's too much oak when all you get is vanilla and maybe some cinnamon and not a whole lot of fresh fruit. Thankfully, we're producing a lot more unoaked Chardonnays bursting with fresh fruit regardless of where it's grown and how it's produced. Chardonnay always has a wonderful sugar-acid balance and a thickness on the palate that really is kind of uniquely Chardonnay. All right, so next we're gonna go over my absolute favorite part, which you guys know is the food pairing. So here we go. So Chardonnay pairs excellently with brie-style cheeses in general. And if you've never made a baked brie that kind of has like the jelly on it or honey and is wrapped in a puff pastry dough, look at that recipe because 10 out of 10 would recommend. When you're drinking Chardonnay, you're going to want to keep spice and flavor intensity low with your food while kind of more accentuating those creamy, buttery flavors and textures. This is a wine, for example, that's worthy of lobster. And to be a little bit more specific, especially because there's a pretty different flavor profile between unoaked and oaked Chardonnay. With oaked Chardonnay, your higher-end wines from California, Burgundy, and Australia, among others. Bolder Chardonnay wines call for crab cakes, clams, halibut, or maybe pork tenderloin with apples. And for vegetarians, lean towards richer starchy vegetables like corn, pumpkin, or even squash. Unoaked Chardonnay, which are like Chablis and maybe some entry-level wines from Chile, New Zealand, and other parts of France. The lean, no-oak style of Chardonnay are great with the raw seafood dishes like oysters, my favorite, sushi, sauteed fish, chicken piccata, vegetable risotto. The crispiness, minerality, and delicate flavors crave those kind of more delicate foods. And lastly, here are some of my Chardonnay recommendations. In full disclosure, I don't love Chardonnay. I don't hate it, and I'm always willing to try anything, so don't get me wrong, I drink it. But my palate doesn't really love neither an oaked or an unoaked Chardonnay, and that's okay. Again, I think it's important to have preferences, while also kind of being willing to try new things. And honestly, I'll try absolutely anything if it pairs well with the food I'm eating, so always willing to try. And I know I've said I usually choose the wine before the food, but when it comes to Chardonnay, I actually usually pick the food first. So here are some of the Chardonnays that I recommend. So first is the Orin Swift Mannequin Chardonnay. The aromatics include lemon, butterscotch, honeysuckle, and jasmine with hints of Granny Smith apple, fresh butter, and lime zest. And some of the tasting notes include things like honeydew, peach, and vanilla. And the great news is you can find this at Total Wine for around $35, which is pretty good for a bottle of Orin Swift and a great gift to give a friend who loves a California, more oakier Chardonnay. Next, we have the St. Hubert's The Stag Chardonnay from Victoria, Australia. It's made in a classic cool climate style. Fruit for this wine was harvested from selected premium sites around Victoria and fermented in tank and oak. You'll likely smell citrus notes of lemon and tart and candied peel with stone fruit aromas of peach and canned pears. In the mix are mineral flint, white flowers, and pie crust as well. As for the palate, the wine is fresh, light, and lively without being lean, with pear and lemon butter and a touch of spicy oak on the palate. You can find this at Total Wine as well for around that $19 range, so even a little bit more affordable than the previous one. And last but not least, the 19 Crimes Chardonnay. So a brief history about 19 Crimes wines. Punishment by transportation. It's the Industrial Revolution. People were increasingly moving to cities, prisons were overcrowded, and petty crime was on the rise. After the Revolution of 1776 prevented transportation to America, Queen Victoria decided banishment to Australia would solve these problems. Between 1788 and 1868, 165,000 convicts made the long voyage by sea to Australia. Times were tough for criminals, but these individuals were tougher. They survived the boat ride and the exile. Now their stories survive into the 21st century with 19 Crimes. So something super unique is that the labels are considered living labels on these wine bottles. If you download the 19 Crimes app, you can hear the stories of each of the prisoners by actually scanning your phone over the label. The 19 Crimes Chardonnay story is about Jane Castings, who was caught and convicted for receiving stolen goods of cheese and bacon in Leicester, England. She trained and paid a group of teenage boys to steal the goods that she requested. In 1846, Jane left her husband and children behind in Leicester and was transported for 7 years to Van Diemen's Land, which is in Tasmania, aboard the Sea Queen. It's filled with stone fruit aromas and a sweet textured palate. The criminally intense toasty oak notes have hints of butterscotch and honey, balanced with layers of ripe fruit. This full-bodied, powerful wine finishes with rich notes of butter and vanilla. And you can get this at Total Wine, Target, and if you're in the Orlando area, at Aardvark in the Sodo area. Aardvark is one of my favorite Orlando spots and has an incredibly unique vibe. It's a restaurant, bar, and bottle shop. It's owned and operated by locals for locals. The food is seasonal, fresh, and from scratch. That's their motto, and there is no settling for less. All locally sourced fish, meats, and produce as well, creating their take on Florida Gulf-inspired cuisine and having fun while they do it. And I've had the opportunity to get to know some of the team there, and it is a great group of people who really, really care about their community, and the food is absolutely delicious. So if you want to grab a bite and a bottle of wine, your favorite beer, and so much more, make sure to check out Aardvark, and they're going to be located at 2610 South Fern Creek Avenue in Orlando. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please, please, please subscribe and share this with your friends, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Cheers!
I've lived through toil and hardship, banishment for leading a gang of thieves, years at the labor factory. But I've paid my price, and I've gained grit and a new life.
I was banished to Australia for crimes against the Crown. They believed my story was over, but it was merely the beginning.
As a soldier, I fought for country. As a rebel, I fought for cause. As a man, I fought for freedom. My name is James Wilson, and I fight to the end.
I've lived through toil and hardship, banishment for leading a gang of thieves, years at the labor factory. But I've paid my price, and I've gained grit and a new life. Someday, sometime, our eyes shall see the faces kept in memory. Someday their hands shall clasp our hand, just over in the morning land.